The dinner was still warm when she lied to my face. "Just meeting Gloria. Be back before 10, she said, slipping her phone into her purse without making eye contact. I watched the steam rise from the lasagna I made from scratch. Her favorite, supposedly. She didn't touch it. She hadn't even sat down. I didn't say anything. Just nodded. Like I always do. Her heels clicked down the hall like a countdown I wasn't ready for. The door shut, soft but final, and I just stood there, holding 2 glasses of wine like an idiot. Like a butler in a marriage that somehow demoted me without notice. My name's Marlin. Yeah, like the fish. Fitting, I guess. I've been dangling on her line for over a decade, hoping she'd reel me in. But lately, I think she just enjoys watching me struggle. 13 years. That's how long I've played this game where the rules constantly change, and I'm the only one who reads the rulebook. This wasn't the first lie, but it was the boldest. Why? Because I told her not to go. Not in a controlling way. Not in a "you're my property" kind of way. In a "please don't make a fool out of me again" kind of way. In a "we've talked about this man before" kind of way. His name's Chance. Yeah, I know. Red flag name if I've ever heard one. She met him through a virtual leadership coaching program. Sounded fake from day one. But I didn't want to be the insecure husband who questions his wife's every professional endeavor. So I played nice. Supported her. Even helped her set up her webcam and backdrop for their Zoom calls. How poetic. But then came the late-night giggles behind closed doors. The phone suddenly face down during dinner. Her screen lighting up in the car with his name, and her telling me, "It's just work stuff, babe." Except work stuff doesn't usually include heart emojis. Or 3-hour strategy sessions at hotel bars. Last week, I finally told her, flat out, "If you go see him again, we're not okay. I mean that, Lorna." She looked at me like I was a toddler throwing a tantrum in aisle 5. And tonight, she left anyway. So now I sit here, lasagna cold, wine undrunk, watching her little blue location drift across the city on the tablet she forgot to log out of. I shouldn't have checked, but I did. She's not at Gloria's. Not even close. She's at the Westway Hotel, room 314, and I'm still sitting at our kitchen table, trying to decide if I should wait until she gets home. Or beat her there. Because for the first time in 13 years, I'm done asking nicely. I sat there for 7 more minutes. That's it. 7. Just long enough for the last sliver of warmth to leave the lasagna, and for me to make the kind of decision that breaks something in you forever. I grabbed my keys and left everything else behind. My wallet, my phone, my pride. I didn't slam the door, didn't stomp down the steps. I walked out the way you do when you're not sure if you're going to return. The Westway Hotel wasn't far. Just across town, tucked behind the shopping center where we used to buy Halloween costumes together. I used to love that place. I used to love everything. But as I parked my car and stared at the glowing blue W sign over the entrance, my stomach turned like I had swallowed a bucket of screws. I don't know what I was expecting. Her to already be gone. Him to not be real. Maybe some miracle where I misread it all, and she was actually volunteering with a charity group that just so happened to meet in hotel rooms. But no, life isn't merciful like that. I walked through the lobby like a ghost. No luggage. No smile. No story. The woman at the front desk looked up, then back down, like she didn't want to be involved. Maybe she recognized the look on my face. Maybe she'd seen it before. Maybe she used to wear it herself. I knew I shouldn't have known the room number. I knew that. But I also knew she hadn't turned off location services, and her digital trail was as loud as a fire alarm to someone who was finally paying attention. Room 314. Top floor. Corner. I took the stairs, partly because I didn't want to wait for the elevator, and partly because I needed to feel something burning in my legs to match the burn behind my ribs. When I reached the door, I hesitated. I didn't knock. Didn't breathe. Just stood there for a full minute with my fist half raised and my thoughts sprinting in every direction. What if I caught the mid-whatever? What if she screamed and played the victim? What if he tried to hit me? What if I hit him back and ended up in jail while she cried in court about how unstable I was? But none of that happened, because the door opened before I even touched it. And standing there, wearing the red dress she hadn't worn in 5 years, the one she told me didn't fit anymore, was Lorna, my wife, my once partner, looking up at me like she'd just seen a ghost. No panic, no apology, just irritation. "Are you serious right now, Marlin?" She whispered sharply, glancing behind her as if she was the one being betrayed. She tried to close the door, but I blocked it with my foot. Not violently, just enough to make her face drop half a shade. Move, she hissed. No, I said, more calmly than I thought possible. Not until you look me in the eye and say it. Say what? That you chose this. That you meant it when you left. She didn't speak. A voice called from inside the room. A man's voice. Deep. Casual. Everything okay, babe? Babe. That word did more damage in 2 syllables than any punch could have. She stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind her. Please don't do this here, she whispered. This isn't the time. 13 years, I said. You had 13 years to make time. And then I did the last thing she ever expected. I took out a folded sheet of paper from my coat pocket, the one I'd carried for weeks, just in case. It was a printout of the separation agreement. Signed by me. Dated. Ready. I told you what would happen if you walked out that door again. I'm just keeping my word. And I left her standing there, in that red dress, in that hallway, with all her choices finally catching up to her. But this wasn't revenge. Not yet. That would come later. And it would be precise. I didn't rush down the stairs. I wanted to. My legs begged me to run, to get away from the scent of perfume and betrayal hanging in that hallway like poison gas. But I walked. Slowly. Deliberately. Every step felt like I was walking out of my own skin and leaving something behind I didn't want anymore. As I hit the lobby, I could still hear the elevator dinging above. She was probably still standing behind that door, maybe trying to explain to that man. What was his name again? Chance. Trevor? I didn't care. He was irrelevant. He was a symptom. She was the disease. I stepped out into the parking lot just as the rain started falling. Perfect. Of course it rained. You don't walk away from 13 years of marriage under clear skies. I sat in the car, soaked but not cold, and stared at the steering wheel. I don't know how long. Long enough for the windshield to fog up, long enough for the world to feel quieter than it actually was. And that's when the message came through. It was from her. Lorna, you're being cruel. We need to talk. Cruel? No. Cruelty would have been live streaming her hotel visit to our friends and family. Cruelty would have been dragging the kids into it. Instead, I gave her dignity, silence, privacy, and she called it cruelty. So I drove. Not home. Not yet. Home didn't feel like home anymore. I needed distance. I needed air. I needed something else. I ended up at the 24-hour grocery store. Don't ask me why. Maybe because it was bright. Neutral. Nobody asks questions in a grocery store at midnight. They just assume you're getting soup or bandages or trying to fix something broken. And that's exactly what I was doing. I walked the aisles like a zombie until I found myself standing in front of the greeting cards. I stared at the anniversary section like it was written in a different language. One card caught my eye. It had a cartoon fish saying, "You're my greatest catch." It was stupid. Too on the nose. I put it back. Then I saw her. Not Lorna. Someone else. A woman I vaguely recognized. She was holding a kid in one arm, groceries in the other, struggling to get her debit card out of her wallet. Her son had been in my daughter's 3rd grade class last year. I remembered him because he wore superhero capes every day. She looked exhausted. Alone. Like she carried her world on her shoulders and no one noticed. I helped her bag her groceries. She smiled at me. Said thank you. Called me Mr. Marlin. Even though I told her to just call me Marlin. It was nothing. But it was something. And when I got back into my car, something clicked. I had spent 13 years trying to save a woman who didn't want to be saved. Trying to be her anchor while she tried to float away. But maybe, not tonight, but someday soon, I'd stop trying to fix the unfixable. But before any of that, I had unfinished business. You see, Lorna didn't know that I'd already spoken to my lawyer 3 weeks ago. She didn't know I had access to our shared accounts, or that I'd been quietly documenting everything, dates, texts, withdrawals, location logs. And she didn't know that what I left in the mailbox before driving to the hotel wasn't just a separation agreement. It was just the first piece of a much larger puzzle. A puzzle she wasn't going to be able to solve in time. She got home at 2:13 a.m. I know this because the security camera on the porch sent the motion alert straight to my backup phone. The same backup she forgot existed. It caught everything. Her fumbling with the keys, dropping her purse, pausing for a full 10 seconds before opening the door like she wasn't sure what would be waiting behind it. But nothing was. At least, not in the traditional sense. I wasn't there. But something else was. On the kitchen table, directly under the overhead light, I had left 3 things. My wedding ring. A printed copy of the hotel receipt. Room 314, timestamped, signed under her name. A handwritten note on the back of one of our old family photos, the one from Disneyland where we all pretended we were happy. All it said was, "You crossed the line. You don't get to cry about the consequences." No yelling, no confrontation, no scene, just facts. Let her sit with those. Let the silence scream louder than I ever could. I watched her on camera sit down, stare at the items, and just freeze. She didn't cry. Not at first. She didn't pick up the ring. Her hands trembled, but she didn't move. Like if she just stayed still enough, none of it would be real. Classic Lorna, master of emotional avoidance. She tried calling me 11 times that night. I didn't answer. I spent the night at a cheap roadside motel 2 towns over. Not glamorous, not even clean, but it was anonymous, and I needed the kind of anonymity that lets you scream into a pillow without worrying about neighbors. I didn't sleep, of course. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what part of me still felt sad and why. I had every reason to be furious, but all I could feel was emptiness. Not grief, not even heartbreak, just depletion. 13 years had drained me like a slow, silent leak. And it wasn't until now, with her lie laid bare and the weight finally dropped, that I realized how light I felt without her. The next morning, she tried the kids. Texted them first, then called again. They were with my sister. They'd been there for 3 days already. She didn't know. I'd planned ahead. Because deep down, I always knew this day would come. The day the marriage cracked open wide enough that something toxic would spill out. And I refused to let our children wade through it. Her texts got desperate fast. "Please talk to me. I messed up. I know that. Let's not throw everything away. We can fix this. Please. Please. Where are you?" It's amazing how quickly people beg for stability once they realize you've stopped trying to hold everything together. But it was already too late for apologies. Not because I wanted revenge. No, this wasn't about punishing her. That would have been too easy. This was about truth. About finally letting her see just how deep her betrayal ran. Not just in action, but in habit, in attitude, in expectation. She always believed I'd never leave. That I was too soft, too good. That I'd put up with anything because I wasn't the kind of man to walk away. She was right, until the moment she proved I had nothing left to stay for. And now? Now I was about to teach her the most painful lesson of all. When a quiet man finally gets tired of being quiet, he doesn't raise his voice. He disappears and takes the ground out from under you. 3 days. That's how long it took before she truly began to unravel. The first 24 hours were desperation. The texts came like a storm, chaotic, relentless, sometimes apologetic, sometimes furious. One moment she was begging me to come home, the next accusing me of abandoning our family, as if she hadn't already done that in room 314 with someone who didn't even know our kids' names. She left voicemails, too. I didn't listen to all of them, but one stood out, her voice cracking, trying to maintain composure, but there was something hollow behind her tone. "You're really going to throw everything away over one mistake? After everything I've done for us?" Everything she'd done. She really believed she was the hero of our story. The second day was different. Quieter. More calculated. She started reaching out to mutual friends. Carefully curated messages to paint herself as confused, blindsided, and worried about Marlin's mental state. I expected that. Lorna never did anything without managing the narrative. She didn't just want me back. She wanted to control how she was perceived while trying to do it. What she didn't realize was that I had already reached those same friends before she did. Every single one of them. I never trashed her. I didn't need to. I just shared the facts. Dates. Screenshots. Patterns. Receipts. Quiet, methodical truth. Not emotion, just proof. And the thing about truth? It doesn't need drama to do damage. It just sits there, rotting the story she built from the inside out. By the third day, the panic had truly set in. She started noticing the little things. The Netflix account was locked. All the streaming profiles, hers, the kids, even the dog's dumb novelty account she made, all gone. Just one remained. 314. No password. No settings. Just a black screen that said, "If you're watching, I know." Petty? Maybe. But it wasn't about revenge. It was about precision. About showing her I wasn't lashing out. I was cutting ties, piece by piece, and I knew exactly what I was doing. The bank was next. She logged into our joint account, and found it empty, not drained, just disconnected. I hadn't taken the money. I'd moved my name, left hers exactly where she wanted to be, alone. I'd also closed the credit card we opened together, not in anger, but because why should I bankroll her betrayal? That evening, she drove to my sister's place. I wasn't there, but the kids were, and they didn't run to her like they usually did. My sister told me later how Lorna stood at the front step, trying to smile like nothing was wrong, but my son didn't even look up from his book. My daughter asked, "Why did you lie to Daddy?" And that was enough to send Lorna walking back to her car with her mouth tight and her eyes hollow. This wasn't punishment. This was clarity. This was her finally witnessing the result of her actions not through my voice, but through silence, distance, and absence, the three things she thought she'd never have to face from me. And still, I hadn't spoken a single word to her, because I knew what was coming next. She was going to break pattern. The woman who had once told me she needed space was now going to violate it. The one who always made decisions behind closed doors was about to come pounding on mine. And when she finally did, she was going to find out that the man she thought she could always manipulate was already 10 steps ahead of her. It was raining again when she came. There's something about rain that follows endings like a shadow, as if the sky itself has been eavesdropping on your life and can't help but weep. I saw her pull into the driveway with her high beams still on, tires screeching slightly on the wet pavement. I didn't flinch. I didn't even move. I had been sitting in the living room with the lights off, a single lamp lit in the hallway behind me casting a long, stretched shadow across the floor. I wasn't hiding. I was waiting. She didn't knock gently. She pounded. Furious, full-fisted slaps against the door like she could somehow beat sense into the wood. Then came the voice, high-pitched, desperate, shrill in a way I hadn't heard since the time she thought she lost her phone at the beach and accused a 10-year-old boy of stealing it. "Marlin, open the door. You've made your point already." I waited. 30 seconds. Let it sink in that she no longer had a key. I changed the locks the day after the hotel incident. I watched her jangle her old key uselessly in the knob, like someone trying to rewind time with brute force. Finally, I opened the door, but just enough for her to see my face. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. And that silence, that terrifying, calm silence, knocked her off balance more than any screaming match ever could. Her hair was a mess, soaked from the rain. Mascara smeared slightly under her eyes. She looked like a woman who had been living in a version of her life she no longer recognized. "Good. Can we please talk?" she said, hugging herself. I let her stand in the rain 2 more seconds. Then I stepped aside. She came in fast, shaking, dripping on the hardwood floors. I didn't offer a towel, didn't offer warmth. The temperature in the room dropped the moment she stepped inside. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said first, which was the wrong opening line. "It's not like I was planning on leaving you. I was confused. I needed something that felt alive again, something that reminded me who I was." I stared at her. "And who were you?" "Exactly, in room 314. That shut her up. She looked away, biting her lower lip, the way she used to when she was caught lying about little things. Sneaking a cigarette, making purchases we hadn't budgeted for. Back then, it was forgivable. Now it was just a signal. A tell. A neon arrow pointing to the rot she'd tried to perfume over. "I didn't sleep with him," she said suddenly, too defensively. "It didn't get that far." I raised an eyebrow. "Didn't get that far? Or you didn't let it?" She didn't answer. And honestly, I didn't care. Whether she did or didn't matter anymore. She went there with intention. With makeup, perfume, and lies. You don't reserve a hotel room just to pray and eat room service. "I didn't expect you to disappear," she finally muttered. "I thought we'd fight. Get through it. That's what couples do. We've had hard times before." "No," I replied. "We've had difficulties. This was a decision. You made a choice. You don't get to walk away from the rules and expect me to keep pretending the game's still fair." She opened her mouth to argue again, but I cut her off. "There's no us, Lorna. You're not here to fix this. You're here because you realized I finally stopped playing the part." Her hands trembled. "And the kids? They're fine. Protected. Stable. Living in a house where lies don't come through the front door anymore." The hit landed hard. She swayed, just slightly, and sat down on the armrest of the couch like her knees couldn't carry her anymore. "You're different," she whispered. "No," I said. "You just stopped pretending I'd never leave." The silence between us stretched like a canyon. Deep. Final. She wasn't crying anymore. She wasn't screaming. She was looking at me like she didn't even recognize me, and maybe she didn't. Because for the first time in 13 years, she was meeting the man I would have been if she hadn't spent over a decade trying to reshape me into something smaller. I gave her 10 minutes. That's all. 10 minutes to sit in what she destroyed. Then I walked to the door and held it open. She stood, slowly, and walked past me. As she stepped out into the rain again, I said only one thing. This is the last time you'll ever be in this house. The next time we speak, it'll be through lawyers. She turned to speak, but I closed the door. Not hard, not with anger, just with certainty. 3 weeks. That's how long it took for Lorna to finally understand the storm wasn't going to pass, because she wasn't in a storm. She was the cause of it. And now she was standing alone in the wreckage, begging people to believe she had nothing to do with the demolition. At first, she tried the "we're going through a rough patch" story. Told her friends I was emotionally withdrawing, that I had become cold, detached, that I'd overreacted to a misunderstanding. But the thing about Lorna is, she never learned to lie to people who weren't already invested in her illusion. And by the time she realized the narrative wasn't sticking, the damage was already done. You see, I wasn't just sitting in silence during those weeks. I was documenting, not to humiliate her, but to prepare for what I knew was coming. The performance. Screenshots of her hotel booking confirmations. Timestamped texts with names that didn't match who she said she was with. An actual voice recording, unintentionally captured by a home assistant device, of her taking a call from Chance in our kitchen while I was upstairs giving our daughter a bath. Her laughing, whispering, saying things I can't even repeat without tasting metal in my mouth. And then the finances. I wasn't cruel. I didn't leave her broke or stranded. But I removed her from everything that had my name on it. Joint accounts, shared credit, my employer insurance, even the car title. I'd bought her that car for her birthday 4 years ago. She'd cried when I gave her the keys. Told me I was too good for her. Apparently, she meant that literally. She tried contacting my sister again. That didn't go well. Then she went to my parents. She cried to my mother, telling her that I'd thrown away our family for a mistake. But my mom had already seen the evidence. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even raise an eyebrow. Just looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You stopped being family the day you lied to my son's face and kissed another man behind his back." Lorna left shaking. I wasn't even there. She was unraveling in slow motion, and there was nothing she could cling to that didn't already have her fingerprints on it. She lost the house. I offered her the chance to stay in the guest room until she found a place, civilly, through my attorney, but she refused. Said she'd never live under my control again. Fine. She moved in with Dana, her best friend, the same one who had always covered for her girls' nights. The same one who, by the way, was sleeping with her ex-husband while still living under the same roof. Poetic. I could have made things uglier. I had the legal leverage, the emotional leverage. But that's the thing about people like Lorna. They expect revenge. They expect a scene. They're prepared for drama. What they're not prepared for is calculated peace. Peace that locks them out without ever slamming a door. The kids? They adjusted faster than I imagined. My daughter stopped asking for bedtime hugs from her mom after she overheard Lorna crying in the driveway one night and said, "Mommy always cries when she tells lies." I wanted to correct her. Wanted to say it wasn't that simple. But it was. Kids see what we pretend to miss. And they remember. Lorna's last attempt at control came as a letter. Handwritten. Delivered through a mutual friend. 6 pages. 6 full pages of bleeding ink about how she lost herself, how I drifted, how no one teaches you how to save a marriage. There was even a line that said, "Sometimes we break the things we love the most because we're afraid of losing them anyway." I read it once. Then I folded it in half and placed it in a box marked legal, with the rest of the documentation, not out of spite, but out of clarity. Because this wasn't a love story gone wrong. It was a lesson. A lesson in what happens when you push someone past the point of return and still believe they'll come crawling back. A lesson in mistaking silence for weakness. A lesson in how the quiet ones don't scream, they build escape routes. And when they finally leave, they don't look back. 6 months. That's how long it's been since she walked out into the rain and never stepped back into our home again. In the beginning, the silence was loud. I don't know how else to describe it. The house was cleaner, calmer, but not warm. The kind of silence that reminded you something had died. Not a person, but a version of yourself. The man who used to apologize for things he didn't do. The man who held together a crumbling structure with duct tape and loyalty. That man was gone. And what replaced him? Someone I had forgotten I could be. At first, I didn't know what to do with myself. I'd spent so many years orbiting around someone else's moods, expectations, and shifting boundaries that when the gravity lifted, I floated. Aimless. Hollow. I'd pick up a shirt in the closet and think, she bought this. I'd make coffee and pause halfway through, realizing I wasn't making 2 cups anymore. But then something shifted. Slowly, quietly, I started laughing again. Real laughter. Not the polite kind you use at dinner to avoid confrontation, but the kind that catches in your chest and surprises you. I reconnected with my kids in a way I didn't even know was missing. My daughter and I started baking together every Sunday. Horribly messy, over frosted disasters that somehow became the highlight of my week. My son and I built a model rocket. It failed twice. He laughed both times. That laugh healed something I didn't realize was still broken. I started taking long walks at night. No destination, no phone, just the sound of leaves, wind, and thoughts that no longer felt like enemies. I joined a local photography group, bought a used camera, and started shooting the things I used to ignore. Cracks in sidewalks, rusty mailboxes, strangers laughing in parking lots. There's something poetic about capturing moments that don't belong to you. It reminded me that life goes on, and that it can still be beautiful, even after devastation. And Lorna? She moved away 2 months ago. I heard through someone mutual that she took a job out of state. She didn't say goodbye. I didn't expect her to. I didn't need her to. The last thing I told my lawyer was that if she ever wants to write the kids, she can. But the door to me, that version of me, was closed. Not locked. Just finished. I don't hate her. Not anymore. I did. For a while. I resented every breath she took that didn't come with an apology. But somewhere along the way, I realized hating her was just another version of being chained to her. And I was free now. Really, truly free. You see, this story isn't about betrayal anymore. It's about rediscovery. It's about waking up one morning, realizing you survived the worst parts of your life, and that you didn't just survive them. You transformed because of them. I'm not the same man I was when she left. I'm stronger, wiser, softer, in the ways that matter, and sharper where it counts. And sometimes, when the kids are asleep and the house is quiet, I sit on the back porch with a cup of tea and stare up at the stars. Not searching for answers. Just being. There's peace in that. A peace she'll never understand. And that's not my burden to fix anymore.